not so much a news story. Well, I guess it is in that it was news this week. Yeah, basically, it is possible to get the orange box running on Xbox Series X and almost certainly Xbox Series S at 60 frames per second. It would likely be, well, it would be 1440p on Series S, and it is 4K on Series X. Now, how do you do it? So let's talk about, first of all, because, we haven't done it ourselves. So there's kind of like I described it earlier to John and Alex as a chain of custody of credits that needs to be given, right? That starts with DF supporter SJ33, Jake. Hi, Jake.
Jake.
Who pointed out this tweet from F4Me.
Yeah, Fammy.
Fammy.
Yeah,
yes.
It does it. YouTube channel, YouTube channel, great person.
Yeah. And basically, that in turn leads to a YouTube video which shows, well, it is, looks like Portal here running at Xbox Series X. The channel owner of that footage is Reverie Pass. And he's saying in his video description, "Hey, exclamation point, I found a way to make the orange box run at 60 FPS on Xbox Series consoles. This is done using an unmodified stock Xbox 360. So this process is quite involved. So let's just take a look at some Half-Life 2 footage on Series X.
Don't worry about the process.
The process is, well, it is really, really interesting. It is that, basically the save game system on Xbox 360 has been compromised, right? So people are able to take saves from the Xbox 360 over to their PCs, decrypt them, and then there's basically a user settings file where you can add standard source commands. And the first one that he's added here is FPS_max0, which basically means no maximum frame rate. And because the system is running with a 60 FPS cap via VSync, you get 60 FPS. This does work to a fashion on Xbox 360, except it's using a double buffer VSync.
Yeah.
So you kind of careen between 30 and 60 frames per second. Anyway, the point is you add all of these commands, and he's actually specified some commands which we think, LOD 0, for example, would suggest highest possible LOD. And then there's other stuff like mipmaps seemingly on negative.
Get some higher res textures in there at the distance.
Higher res textures. I actually noted, I don't know whether this actually applies to the stock version, but on Series X I could see moire patterns because of that.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
That does make sense.
And he's doing something here with Specular. But anyway, the point is you add these commands to the to the config file, you re-sign it, re-encrypt it, copy it onto your Xbox 360, and from there you copy it to the cloud. And then when you load in the orange box on an Xbox Series console, it will pull that down from the cloud, and you have 60 frames per second on Series machines. And this is fascinating. There are, dare I say it, some caveats. They are that it only works if you use new game. If you access any of your saves, you're back to 30 FPS. If you start a new game, quit, and then start a new game again, it looks like you're back at 30 FPS. So this is where quick resume on the Xbox Series consoles likely would save the day here. It means you wouldn't need to do a complete playthrough in one session. But this is really quite interesting stuff. John, thoughts on this? Because this, obviously, we got the Xbox One X enhancements to this, which is why we have 1440p on S and 4K on X. But we never got 60 frames per second.
That's true. Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't done an FPS boost on this officially, given that. But I mean, this is just kind of a neat technical demo testing, right? Like, I don't think this is actually a really viable method for enjoying these games.
I think it is, but you have to basically commit to a playthrough on one save.
You've got to commit to a playthrough on one save
and use quick resume.
Right, but like that's a lot of buts.
Yeah, there's a lot of buts,
and those things don't always necessarily pan out.
And you need a modified 360. Sorry, an unmodified 360. But you need a 360 is the point.
So I mean, given how easily accessible Half-Life 2 is on everything else, and how simple it is to run, it's kind of it's a weird thing, but it is cool that it exists, and I would hope then that the fact that it exists in this form opens the door for either improving it so that you can play the game normally with, with proper saving and whatnot.
Right.
And also, I know they said they're not going to do it, but man, it'd be cool if they're like, you know what, we're going to add FPS boost to the orange box just so people can enjoy this on Xbox at a proper 60 FPS.
Right.
Because it clearly runs without issue, right? So
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. That's a great addition.
It's one of those games.
Well,
yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex. I'm interested in your opinions on this.
It's one of those games though where even I honestly think Series S could do 4K 60. Like the orange box version of Half-Life 2 adds things like HDR, bloom, not real HDR, internal HDR, and has like some real-time shadow maps from your flashlight. But these are all things that are like that GPU is kind of like an RX 480, 47. What is it like the most equivalent like PC?
What, the Xbox One X?
Xbox Series S, like
Series S. That's a tricky one. Yeah. I mean, it's basic. I think like a Radeon 5500, something like that. Downclocked a bit.
I would be so surprised if that can't do 4K 60 in Half-Life 2 episode 0 through 2. Like really, like it's so old at this point, and it wasn't exactly a hard game to run back then when it came out on PC. I remember definitely like that was like one of the few games when it came out in 2007, the episode 2 version that was updated like that, like even on like the 8800 GT at the time, it just flew at like probably full HD, really high frame rates. So I would almost wish that if this became official, that they wouldn't just like kind of arbitrarily limit it to a 4X upscale on Series S, but they actually said like, oh, let's just do it actually up to full 4K.
I mean, the whole FPS boost thing, I mean, the concept is that they have access to the GPU at the DirectX level, Microsoft, and they can basically make tweaks to increase resolution. There's a couple of weird things here. When you look at the resolution on Xbox 360, if you go into the options menu, it says 1280 by 720. If you do the same on Xbox Series X, it says 1920 by 1080. So it seems that the game thinks it's running at 1080p, but then the X enhancements are basically boosting it up from there, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the difference here is that, when you are dealing with the system and DirectX, it may introduce issues which you can overcome simply by, making tweaks to software, which I think is what Dark Souls 3. I think that was a completely different method of FPS boost, which actually involved a collaboration with the developer. But if it is just a case of having FPS_max 0 in your save file or in your config file, surely there's a system level tweak that could do that.
Of course there is.
Surely.
Also, theoretically, this would also work for Portal 2. Although, wait, is Portal 2 backwards compatible?
I believe it is. I'd have to check.
Wouldn't it also work for Portal 2? That's interesting.
Yeah, it
might be
should.
worth taking a look at. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Portal 1 and 2 are on Switch.
And also
as well,
for the abandoned version of CSGO, right? Didn't they release CSGO for that console?
Yeah, Portal. We should actually take a look at this because Portal 2 for Xbox 360 is indeed Xbox One X enhanced.
There you go. Technically, it should work then.
I might have a look at that after we finished on this. Yeah, interesting, because that's a great game that would be even better to have at 4K 60. But what I will say is, I mean, I did all this footage here, and obviously I had to start from the beginning of the game, right? And Half-Life 2 still holds up. Brilliant game.
I know. I've been playing in VR, actually.
There were some minor annoyances with it because, certain systems have aged and whatnot. But the point is, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's still a great game.
It's still really interesting and evocative.
Yeah. Well, this I mean, that was a really interesting sort of experiment. Tom is actually going to be working on a full video on this to see what the strengths and weaknesses are. I did actually notice on episode 2 a very, very, very slight frame rate drop on Xbox Series X, basically when that huge wave effect comes at you right at the beginning of the game,
Oh, right.
causing that train to collapse off the bridge behind you. It wasn't actually the train that caused the problem. It's just the effect of the wave. But that was literally everything else. I mean, you'd expect that from Half-Life 2, obviously, because it was significantly older and less taxing on the GPU than the episodes.
Right.
But even so, I was slightly surprised that the Series X couldn't handle that
Yeah.
for full frame rate. But interesting nonetheless. And I'm just wondering if there are other games where there are essentially software unlocks to full 60 FPS that might actually make more FPS boost possible, just using a software method rather than the DirectX manhandling of the code.
I'd imagine for a lot of the games that had PC versions back in the day, they might have a config file, like part of it as part of the game itself too, that shipped with it. That is just like Unreal Engine 3 games, for example. I would totally imagine those definitely shipped with like INIs for the 360 version. I know that.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
I am going to end this with a note on the fact that it has been digitally removed from the Xbox store, the Orange Box. You cannot buy the game on there anymore. The demo, weirdly enough, you can download that and the associated media materials. But it was delisted, I think, in February this year, which I think is a real disappointment. You can, of course, still buy the disc copies, but that makes life a lot more difficult for you if you're on a Series S console, obviously.
Yeah.
I've had to jump through hoops a bit on that. I mean, thankfully, Oliver has got the Orange Box as a digital purchase, so in theory, we should be okay in showing the Series S and how it copes with this in our upcoming video. But why would you delete Half-Life 2? Maybe it's something to do with EA? I don't know.
Because weird. Who knows?
All right.
But the user shouldn't have to put up with that roadblock to accessing classic content, right?